Alright everyone, there are two important bits of Trump-related news that I have to relay and analyze here. I decided to roll them up into one video because it seems, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm about 99% sure that YouTube has begun to fiddle further with its notifications and other, algorithmic manipulation of some sort, so that if you upload multiple videos, it begins to demote the earliest videos that you've uploaded. Like if you do 4 in a row, the most recent one is fully notified to everyone. The one after that, a little bit less so, and then a little less so. There's a declining rate of return. So at this point, unless it's something monumental and groundbreaking or it's a stream, I'm going to stick to 3 videos a day max. I might even drop it sometimes to 2, depending on if it's a slow news day. Or start doing more streaming in place of some of those videos. But we got to talk about the Omnibus spending bill veto threat. It rolls over into DACA, the wall, and it fulfills what I've said. And I think Trump is doing well on that. I agree with him on potentially vetoing the spending bill. It's an overburdensome bill. We need to stop kicking the can down the road. We've had this problem. We had it, 5 or 6 times under Obama. We've had it twice so far under Trump. He's not even 2 years into his presidency. Already twice now you've had a shutdown looming, technically a 3rd time. It's ridiculous. We need to get spending under control. The libertarians are totally right on this. Tax cuts are great. Now, I wish we'd have a second round like Trump has suggested we might have. That's a great idea. We also need, however, additionally to that, spending cuts. We need to stop making these gigantic spending bills in which everything is pork, everything is a rider, everything is non-essential, and it just gets passed in the dead of night because Congress didn't read it. Congress has passed this bill and put it before Trump without being able to read even a small minority of what's in it. No person in the House or Senate fully read it. Rand has stood out and said, well, I'm voting against it, which I believe he did. And he's coming out. He gets to grandstand now. He's holding a stack of paper this fucking tall, like 2 feet tall, and saying, hey, nobody could read it. I think that we should read things before we pass them. Yeah, no shit. Wouldn't it make sense? And Trump is right to threaten to veto it, but he's throwing something in that doesn't relate to the burdensome nature of spending or the opaque nature of a 2,000-page spending bill that was passed in the middle of the night. That's worrisome enough, but additional to that, Trump is saying, hey, hundreds of thousands of DACA recipients have been abandoned by the Democrats, so I'm going to hold that over their head. I want to talk about that. Maybe I have to veto this because it doesn't address DACA. It also doesn't fund my border wall. Fund the fucking wall. I totally agree with him on that, and that's exactly what I predicted he would do. At some point, eventually, he'd hold it back over their heads. He's holding their toes to the fire again after a lapse of time. Let them calm back down. Now he's trying again. He's going to do this over and over until he gets some sort of negotiation through. That's exactly what's going to happen. It will involve border wall funding. Which, by the way, look, here's the funny part. Congress is willing to say yay or nay and largely and almost overwhelmingly pass a spending bill they don't even read, but they have a problem with the possibility that it's going to fund border wall defenses. Something that the majority of the public wants, they're reluctant to add to a bill that they don't even know what's actually been added to it. They don't know what's being spent on. They don't know what kind of riders are in there. They don't know what kind of provisions are in there. They don't know anything about the bill. It's like Obamacare or anything else, or the Republican solution, so-called, to the ACA overhaul. Oh, here's 500 pages of legalese. Just say yes. Just say yes to it. What's in it? Oh, they pulled a Pelosi. That's why it got voted down. That's why it got shelved. Nobody wanted to vote for it. Why are they willing to vote for this one then? Because it's bipartisan? Just because it's bipartisan doesn't mean it's a good idea. So I stand with Trump and with Rand Paul on that. Whenever Trump and Rand fundamentally agree with one another on something, you can bet I'm probably aboard. Probably. Then we have to talk, though, about Bolton. And this is something where I don't stand with Trump. I think Rand's come out against the concept of Bolton as national security advisor. So you're saying that a W-era individual, who I believe held the same post at the time, is back in the White House now, back within the inner circle of the executive branch. That makes somebody like me nervous. As an anti-war millennial who acutely remembers the Iraq War era, it makes me a little bit nervous when John Bolton is involved with any executive function having to do with this national security, which means war, generally. War and counterterrorism. Isn't this the dude that liked Gitmo and said torturing people was okay? And, don't worry about war crimes. Don't worry about the 500,000 dead Iraqis or the tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers that got killed or maimed or came back with PTSD. Don't worry about the trillions of dollars we spent. Proxy wars are fun. Dick Cheney needs more oil to fill his hot tub. That's John Bolton in a nutshell. He's incoherent. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just a bitter proxy war-loving warmonger. Here's the big problem. The big problem with the Bolton. He's a sign of the times post-collapse of the Soviet Union. Before, if warmonger meant, well, we're going to wage some grand chessboard campaign against this country that's supporting communism, or has a commie government, or might become communist or something. Then it took the form of something more standardized. These days, though, it's predominantly we're fighting militants or some civilian militia group. It's really becoming a problem. It takes a lot of money, the reward is scant, and it's basically just an attempt to maintain the order as it already exists. The hegemonic US-backed order. Post-Soviet Union, you no longer have a bipolar world. You have one pole of power. It's the West. US has won. NATO has won. That's it, and that's all. These people thought that was the end of history, and so we can have our globalism. We can take 90% of the world's wealth. It'll be exactly what we wanted in the Gilded Age. It'll be exactly what George W.'s grandpa wanted with the business plot trying to overthrow the U.S. government. Wanted to form a monopolar sort of fascist world in which corporations and government would be indistinguishable from one another. Everything would be centralized. It'd be a little bit like Metropolis or something. It'd begin to look like that sort of dystopian hellhole of a future. There wouldn't be any individuality. You wouldn't even need to. Why would you need democracy? It wouldn't be worth voting. The people who are the apolitical, the bitter anti-political folks, the nihilists come out and say, well, voting is bullshit because, it's one stupid asshole versus another stupid asshole. You'd be quite literally right. There'd be no reason not to be totally bitter about the system at that point. Yeah, Prescott Bush, who sold oil to the Nazis while also funding the U.S. side, was a war profiteer, and it trickled down to Herbert Walker. He's a war profiteer. W's a war profiteer. Anyone associated with W is a war profiteer. Why do you think Dick Cheney was his running mate? What particular chops did he have to say, well, yeah, if George W. strokes, chokes on a pretzel next time and he doesn't get, resuscitated, I get to be president of the United States. What qualified him? What qualifies John Bolton to be National Security Advisor? I am extremely uncomfortable with having a profiteering war hawk neocon in that position. Then, though, there's the other side of this. And that's that I saw people like I'm Being Liberal or CNN. They're like decrying it. They're like, oh no, John Bolton's in there. We're going to have another Middle Eastern war, which, is possibly the case. I hope it's not. I hope this doesn't mean Trump's actually going to go hard in on the Iran deal. I hope he's not going to inflame the Middle East. I want him to focus on North Korea and rebuilding relations in Asia, and preferably the Americas too. Let's have an American century in the most literal sense. Let's stop dicking around in the Middle East. We don't need their oil anymore. We've got our own oil. If we can solve the Venezuela issue, then we never have to worry again. We never have to set foot in the Middle East again. We can stay in our own hemisphere and be lords of our own hemisphere. Everyone will respect us more. It'll be cheaper. We'll be more powerful and much more wealthy. You won't see the United States fall into decadence for a century thereafter. We'll be just fine for several generations. We can ensure our future, but not with neocon bullshit. The liberals, though, come out and decry it. And they're making stupid arguments because they're saying like, oh yeah, war in the Middle East, and all of a sudden, they start talking about how the Iraq war has taken so many lives, cost so much money. You said nothing when Obama was the president. You said nothing for 8 years about these things. Do not pretend to all of a sudden be a pacifist. Don't pretend all of a sudden you're anti-war. No, you're not anti-war. You're anti-war if a Republican is occupying the White House. Well, cry me a fucking river. You didn't care how many kids got splattered when Obama was the president. You didn't care if he gave guns to cartels. You didn't care if he armed the FSA, prolonged the Syrian civil war, creating millions of refugees. You didn't care when he ran no-fly zones in Libya, crushed their country out of existence by removing the secular dictatorship that was keeping them safe. I hate to say it, but, democracy in that sense has been overrated in Libya because it doesn't exist. It's just a theocratic system now, tribal warfare. That's all that exists. It's like Afghanistan. So neocons and neoliberals have been doing the same things, but you never speak out against these vices in government when a Democrat's president. It's just like surveillance, censorship, corporations stifling speech. You didn't care about these things from the period of 2008 to 2016. Now all of a sudden you have a conscience, you're anti-establishment again, except you're still pro-corporate when it comes to them shutting down those evil right-wingers, like, pro-gun channels on YouTube. Big problem. They're starting to upload their stuff to Pornhub. I've actually considered doing that. I've considered going to one of those sites where you're like, oh, you can upload what you want, it's X-rated, so we don't care. I've considered uploading my material there. Obviously not making this kind of stuff you typically would search there, but yeah, I've considered backing up the occult videos there. Why not? If they're standing for free speech more than the big tech corporations, yeah, why not do it? I mean, it's a sane investment. It's a sane use of your time. But I oppose Bolton being in any post within the government. I'd oppose anyone from the W years being in any post within government. Or from the Obama era, for that matter, because it's the same thing. But I do support him on potentially vetoing the spending bill. It should be vetoed. If time is not given for it to be read, it should be vetoed. Trump should shut down the government. I don't care if he gets blamed for it. The average citizen doesn't even know what a government shutdown is. They don't know that it doesn't mean the government ceases to exist. Everything is anarchy. It just means they close national parks because they're dumb, and they think that that's non-essential, but they think that a bunch of government workers that do butt-fuck nothing are essential. No, we should shut down half of these bureaus permanently. They shouldn't even exist. So why are we spending any money on them? And I understand you're saying, well, it costs more in the long run to shut it down. Okay. No, it costs more in the long run to pass a shitty spending bill that runs up a bunch more debt. Again, the Democrats care about that now. They didn't care. Again, for 8 years, they said it was fine. Obama cared when he first ran. Oh, it's irresponsible spending, said Obama. Then all of a sudden it didn't become a problem. Meanwhile, Trump's been largely good for the economy. I understand the Dow had a tough day yesterday because of tariffs with China. Boo-hoo! They just slapped tariffs on our goods. This will happen several more times, and they will get to the fucking negotiating table. The tariffs will end up rescinded or equalized, and Trump will get concessions. That's his whole goal. It's a good thing. Temporary pain for a long-term solution. It will be good for the country. That's my prediction on the tariff war. There will be no long-term tariff war. No, the Chinese will come to the table and they'll say, okay, we get your point. We'll remove ours, you remove yours. What was that about some reform on currency you wanted? They'll give him a few peanuts, but it'll be a few more peanuts than he had before. And by doing this on NAFTA, by doing this on DACA, by doing this on Chinese currency manipulation, by doing this in a dozen different fields, all those little wins add up to one big-ass victory for the U.S. economy and diplomacy. Absolutely they do. It will give Trump the strength that he needs to survive into a second term, honestly, if I had to guess. At this point, of course, we have to wait till after the midterm, see what happens then. That's about all. Peace out.